just read on the subject of knowing. At the end of Mr. Perlman's speech,
Yeah.
Elio asks, "Does Mother know?"
Yeah.
And the father says, he doesn't know.
No, he says no, she doesn't.
She doesn't.
No.
Yeah. What is the knowing?
Does she know? That's a good
Yeah.
question. Many people have asked me that question, and it's a smart question that comes out of the text. You're entitled to ask it. The problem is that the author never thought of it. So basically, there are two possibilities. One is, does Mom know about me and Oliver? That's the one. But then there's the other, the sort of subsidiary one that's also very important. Does Mom know that you yourself wished you had a gay relationship? And that's a question that I had never even considered. But it's totally legitimate, and I don't know how to answer it because both answers are correct. Okay. Yes, sir.
Were you invited to give your opinion as the filming went on, or did the director ask for your guidance or advice?
Yes, they wanted me to steer the whole thing. Actually, I decided from the very, very start, years ago, that I had done my book was mine, I had finished, I had had my say, and it was in their hands to do whatever they pleased, however they wanted to truncate the movie. And they did ask me at some point when I met them, there were many directors online, that's why it took so long. Each director wanted to do the film and then they had to give it up because they were doing something else. Same thing with actors, same thing with writers. There was a lot of sort of in-betweenness. And when I met James Ivory and Luca, they both came to me and we had coffee, and they were very apologetic, but sort of tentative. We've decided that maybe the third chapter that has this whole Roman excursion, well, we were thinking that maybe we might have to reduce it. And I said, so you mean you want to cut it? He said, yeah, we might have to do that. I said, it's fine. So, because that was my philosophy, whatever they want to do is absolutely fine, and I think they did, in my view, they did a wonderful, it's not just an adaptation, it's a recreation of all the moods that are implicit in the book. They've managed to capture the mood. Forget the plot, the mood is always there, so that at the very end of the movie, you have a sense of, at once, enchantment, sadness, elation. All these emotions are mixed together because of the lyrical quality of the shot itself of Elio staring into the fire. And I wanted that at the end of my book as well. I wanted those emotions that are, you can't sort them out. And therefore I wanted that to happen at the end of my own book. And when I saw the film, I said, yeah, they captured it. Everybody's sniveling around here. So obviously something is working. And I got a lot of mail since the book was published telling me that everybody was very, very moved by the film. Or by the novel itself, and they were by the movie as well, even though they're very different, and I'm so happy with that. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, I was a little disappointed that the Roman, the trip at the end was truncated, but I also loved the closing of the movie where Elio stares into the fireplace.
Right.
I thought that captures the emotion and the mood very
That's the idea. Yeah. The other thing that the film does, which the book doesn't have to do, is that the book is written from the perspective of Elio. It's totally introspective. It is obsessively and chaotically introspective. The movie can't do that unless you have a voiceover. And voiceovers, as you know, are okay if you have 3 lines, but if you have a paragraph, it becomes deadly. And they decided not to have any voiceovers. And so basically, Timmy particularly had to portray all this internal activity on his face. And I think he did. The whole story is told on his face. And he makes a few grimaces, but that's just to sort of emphasize the kind of emotions he's experiencing. And I think that's very well done. Yes?
How do your ideas come together when you're initially formulating them? Do you have some idea of the characters at first, or setting, situation?
I didn't have any. I mean, first of all, I don't have ideas. No, I'm serious. I always like to quote this because it's a very famous line by Proust when he was not even started writing his novels. He said, "Any novel that has ideas in it is like a very expensive antique vase that has the price sticker glued to it." So I don't have ideas. But what started the book was not sex. It became sex because something happened to me where my mind just went there. It always does. But it was really the house, and it started with the house by Monet. And I love that house, and I said, I want to live in that house. I want to people it with friends and so on. And then I said, wait a second, I want to be a young man in that house, starting his life. And my parents are going to be there, and blah, blah, blah. And so, and then I said, well, there has to be a love interest. And I said, let's do this. And sure enough, the car arrives, and out comes Oliver. And the rest is the story. I had no idea that this is what I was doing. It was just to kill time because I was writing another novel that was so difficult to do that. And I've said this many times. It was a difficult novel, and it remained a difficult novel. It was a very difficult birth, as they say. And I wanted a break from it, and that was the break, and I was lucky. Yes?
When you started writing Elio and Oliver's journey, did you know how it was going to end?
No. Because I didn't have the plot in mind. I thought, I mean, there were so many possibilities. There was a possibility of Oliver, put it this way. I was going to have an obsessive young man desiring another young man. That was the extent of it. Then I was going to have Oliver either go back to the States or die. He was going to drown in an incident on the sea. Like, you know, that's why you have the Shelley thing, okay? It was not incidental, it was on my mind. He's going to drown. This is sort of foreshadowing, guys, okay? But then I decided, no, they have to say something. Well, they'll just say something, okay? Okay, if they say something, they have to do something. Okay, they'll do just a tiny bit of kissing and that's it. And then I said, oh, come on. Let's go through the whole thing. And then, of course, fruit come in, and then I don't know what happened to me, but it was wonderful because there was no plot outline. I didn't have to respect anything. I just went with it. And part of me, I went with it because I thought I was never going to show it to anybody. I showed it to a few friends in Europe, and they all said, what the hell is going on with you? They were so surprised. I said, but it's fun to read. I said, okay, it's a fun read, and let's leave it at that, okay? But then eventually, you know, I'm interrupting myself because at some point when I was a grad student, we were always discussing that we had to write a bestseller. And the best thing to do was to write a porn novel. So that was not what I was doing. But somebody said, the problem with us, graduate students, is that even if we start writing a porn novel, by page 3, we're already taking it seriously. But I was starting to take this seriously, and I was starting to basically to elaborate on this whole theme of the San Clemente mystique, which is basically we're all made up of 4 layers, at least 4 layers. We all have 4 identities, 4 nationalities, I don't know how many religions, and everything is multiple. And I love that. We're sort of a multi-tiered sort of thing called probably a human being. But that's what we are, and we are sort of confused and obsessive, and we're always trying to sort ourselves out. And we say, okay, fine, this is what I like. And I wrote once an essay called Lavender, in which I was trying to find out what kind of lavender do I like. If I like lavender aftershave. I don't use it, but I like it. And so I said, do I like this one? Do I like that one? Which one do I want? There's always a new lavender in my life that I will have to buy and collect. You have to be crazy. But I love basically the fact that I'm trying to narrow down which is the one lavender that I'm going to live with for the rest of my life. Impossible to decide. Yes? Yes, ma'am.
I have two questions.
But you get
Okay.
one. You get
Well,
one.
like
Just
that.
one.
I'm sorry.
Name?
You get one.
That woman,
Okay.
that horrible woman.
Um,
Come on, you know who I mean. That Trump's.
well, I wanted to ask you.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Ask your question.
I guess I'll ask you this one. I won't ask you the other one.
You can ask the other one first, too, if you want.
Okay, okay. So my first impression of the book and the movie was that, personally for me, I perceived that it possibly broke more boundaries in the movies, and in life in general with people. And how do you feel about that? Do you think it did? And the second question is, what do you do if you get writer's block? Do you get writer's block? How do you break that? Where do you find your writing voice?
I don't know. I'm probably going through writer's block all the time. But I don't know. I just sit at the computer and we sit at the computer. And that's all I know how to do. I mean, it's the best thing I know how to do, or maybe not. But block happens. Yes, you don't know how to move. You don't know what the plot is. And so you work your way. You have to find little sort of sinuous ways of cutting through the block. That's the only advice I have. You find tricks that will help you sort of work your way out of the block. The block exists because we take ourselves very seriously. We're responsible writers, and therefore we have to take ourselves seriously, and therefore, of course, we're blocked. But if you sort of play with it, I find that whenever I take in New York, if I've taken the subway and I have a notepad with me instead of a book, and I'm jotting down something on the notepad, it's because it's in the subway, because I'm writing in public, there's noise, I'm being interrupted, it couldn't possibly count. It doesn't count. And precisely because it doesn't count, some great plot twist comes to me. I say, thank God I wrote the subway, because that's where it comes. Now, what was the first question?
Breaking boundaries.
Breaking boundaries.
Well, I don't know that it breaks boundaries.
Or more boundaries.
No, what it does, if I may say so, is that I think what it helps people to realize, for one thing, that they were never alone.
Okay.
That essentially my story in this novel is an examination of what happens to us when we are insecure, when we are afraid, when we desire someone, when we are ashamed of desiring them, when we are hesitant, and when we don't even want to desire them. And we go from one to the other, back and forth, to all those. That's why I call it a chaos of emotions. And I don't think there's anything broken, there's anything new, because I would wager that everything I say in this book, you've all experienced. There's nothing new in this book. But what it does is it gives you the license to think, God, I wasn't the only person thinking those things. I thought I was sick and twisted. He's equally sick and twisted. You know, and basically you look around, you say, but everybody likes this book, so obviously everybody is sick and twisted. And yes, welcome everyone. You know, we are all very tormented and sometimes even tragic human beings because we are alone. And that's one of the worst things that can happen. We all find ways of not being alone in order to conceal the loneliness from ourselves. But this is a story about a solitary kid who is all by himself all the time and reads books. And suddenly he has this desire for somebody. And he's smart enough and he's honest enough to say, I know what I want from this guy. This is not a novel of a... People call it a coming-of-age story. I don't care about this coming-of-age bit because I will explain to you later why. But because it's basically a human being who knows exactly what he wants. He wants to sleep with Oliver. He's fantasizing about Oliver, and he's totally honest about it. He just doesn't know if Oliver is going to sort of tell him, I'm going to tell your mommy about this. Okay, I mean, he doesn't know what Oliver's reaction is going to be. And that's the thing that's holding him back. Otherwise, he would have been far more sort of forward about it. But what was I saying? I forgot what I was saying.